Hello everybody, welcome back to my RC plane channel. I'm James, continuing on with this Balsa USA Stingray 120 RC plane kit build. Okay, well I'm excited because in this video I'm going to be attaching the wing to the fuselage, which means I'm going to be drilling out the wing bolt into these blocks down here, and then the wing bolt is going to go through obviously the wing. So I'm going to be drilling through the wing, and then I'm going to tap it out to the threads for this nylon bolt here. And then of course the bolt's probably going to be cut, but it's going to go right through like that. And then the other thing I'm going to be doing is on the front end here is going to be drilling out the wing so that the dowels come out through the leading edge. And then for the fuselage up here, we're going to be adding this former, this F3, and it's going to sit on top of the fuselage like it's shown here, and then it's supposed to be reinforced with this piece of plywood. So here's F3 right here. It's going to come out, go right up here, and then this is going to go on top of it. And then once that's secured, once that's glued on to the top of the fuselage right here, then what we're going to do is we're going to put the wing on, we're going to get it all aligned, and then drill through the holes that we've created when we built the wing and into this doubler right here. So the holes are going to come out like it's shown here, one here and one here. Okay, so I haven't made any major modifications, or really any modifications that I know of yet, to this kit as I've been building it. But now I've decided I'm going to do something a little bit extra. So when I look at this up here, and like I mentioned, you have this piece on top of here, then this glues on top of here. If you notice, the holes that you drill for the dowels go right through this joint between F3 and then the former here. And then of course this is put on to reinforce it. So the holes will be in here like so. Now, I know this kit's been around for a long time, and I know this is what the instructions are saying, but to me, this just looks a little flimsy. You have I think a pretty big wing. You know, this is an 83-inch wingspan wing, and for it to be sort of hanging on this seam right in here, I mean, I realize that it's going to be glued and it's going to be reinforced, and you're going to have the other sheeting and stuff on the outside, so it's going to be, you know, it's going to be stronger. And like I said, this kit's been around for many years, and I haven't seen anything when I've read some of the forums kind of looking sort of to get some history on the kit. I haven't seen anywhere where people said there was a problem with this. But for me, personal preference, I just think this looks a little bit flimsy. So what I'm going to do is obviously going to go ahead and put this on here. But I went through my scrap box, and I have a piece of plywood scrap, which is the same thickness of this one. And I'm just going to go ahead and basically cut out a piece that's going to be just bigger. I'm going to extend it to give it, you know, something like this, and epoxy that on. And to me, it just makes me feel a little bit better about that when I'm plugging this wing into this fuselage. So hopefully that's going to be a little bit stronger. So again, it's personal preference. If you're building this kit, you know, do what you feel you want to do. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and add that in this step. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do is right here where the bolt obviously kind of attaches to the wing and goes through into this block. This sheeting out here is just, you know, your soft balsa. And these bolts are going to be kind of pushing obviously straight into that when you tighten it up every time you put the wing on. Now over time, I guess I have a little bit of concern that this is going to get sort of, you know, it's going to kind of work its way in there and kind of push into that wood right there. And so I did is I got a couple pieces of scrap from my scrap box. This is just thin plywood, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it under between the wing. I'm just going to basically glue it on top of the wing in this spot so that it sort of acts like a little, kind of like a washer, if you will, to help sort of just reinforce and strengthen that contact between the nylon bolt and the soft balsa of the wing. So as it's shown here on the plans, looking down on it, I'm just going to cut these this kind of shape, And I'll glue on one like this and one sort of in there like that. And then of course the bolt's going to go through that. And I think that's just going to be helpful, and it's pretty light, but I think that will, to me, again, personal preference, I think I'd like to have that to help sort of just to protect the wing. So if you notice, I have two F3s, and you show on the plans here F3 and F3. They're the same size, obviously. And what it is that one of them is going to be permanent in the connected to the fuselage, and the other one is within this portion here, which actually gets mounted or put on top of the wing. It's sort of an interesting kit design, because the wing has sort of like the fuselage top sort of built into it, and then this is where they obviously where they join. So there's two F3s here. I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these out. Now that this F3 former is now set, I can move on to the wing attachment points. Alright, so the first step in attaching the wing is going to be to make sure that it's lined up properly and that it's nice and perpendicular to the fuselage. I want to keep everything nice and sturdy, and I don't want things to be moving around while I'm doing this. So I have these little sawhorses here, and I just put some clamps on either side, kind of on both sides of the fuselage, kind of here in the back, and obviously right up here in the front. And that's going to keep it nice and snug as I make adjustments to the wing, because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be moving the wing kind of back and forth a little bit just to make sure it's lined up, and I don't want to be moving, obviously I don't want my fuselage to be moving while I do that. Okay, so the way this is going to work is I have the center line of my wing obviously by these seams. Here's this one here in the back on the trailing edge, then I have this seam up here along the leading edge, and I do have my center lines extended onto my kind of the top of my formers, as you can see right here. And so that's the first step, is to get it lined up along that. And it really, you know, it looks pretty good just as is. You know, if I kind of go down and kind of look at it down here, so if you can kind of see that, you know, it looks pretty good. So, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go ahead and check it to make sure that it is lined up properly by measuring the wingtip to the tail section on both sides. And what I'm going to be doing is using a string, and I'm going to attach a string to the tail over here, and then use that string, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out on the tip of one wing, and I'm going to mark that, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, pull the string over and mark it on, or check where it is on the tip of the other wing. And if it's off, I'll just go ahead and rotate the wing a little bit and check it again. So it's going to be like a trial and error process, but that's sort of the best way to do it. Once I'm happy with the alignment of the wing, I'm going to kind of basically tape it and clamp it and just get it nice and snug down on the fuselage so it can't move. And then we're going to go ahead and drill out the holes for the dowels. And the drill is going to go through the existing holes, and they're going to pop out through the leading edge and then go right through our little bulkhead right here. And that's how the dowels are going to kind of engage the fuselage, by going through like that. So that'll be the first step. And then once I get those set, we'll come back and we will drill the wing bolts in, which also includes tapping the blocks below so that the wing bolts can thread down into those blocks. And that's how the wing is going to attach to the plane. And then one thing I wanted to point out real quick is, if you'll notice, if you look at these holes back here, they're a little bit oblong. And the reason that is because when I was lining up the holes to go through from the leading edge through the two pieces of plywood in here, I noticed that I ended up with the dowel kind of pointing down a little bit. And in order for me to sort of bring it back level, I basically elongated these holes in the back so that I can basically kind of just rotate the dowel a little bit so it's more horizontal with the wing. Hopefully that worked. But yeah, so it does look a little oblong, so if you're looking at it, that's the reason for that. All right, so I'm just going to use a T-pin here, and I've already kind of made a mark so I know where it is. I'm just going to drive it into the tail right here like this. And that's going to be the anchor point for the string. Now for the string. Okay, so this string that I'm going to be using is this is used for construction. This is just basically the type of string that they use when you need a level line. So like if you're putting in, you're building a structure, putting a patio and things like that. So you can get something like this at your hardware store if you like this. There's other strings out there. I like this stuff because it's, even though all string is going to be somewhat, stretchable, this is really hard to stretch. It's a very, very, strong string. And this is going to be nice, because what you don't want is kind of a weak string that stretches easily, that has some sort of elasticity in it, because when you're trying to kind of pull this thing, you have to pull it tight, not super tight, but you want to make sure it's nice and straight and tight enough, and you need to compare it to both sides. If it was stretching while you were doing that, that would make it more difficult. So you don't want something, and this is going to be an extreme example, obviously you don't want something like this, because that would just make it very difficult to figure out. All right, well, simple enough. I just put a little loop in here, and now I can go ahead and use this, and I can pull it over to that wingtip over there on the left, and then I can rotate it and take it over to right wingtip. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of tape, and when I get it over to the wingtip, I'm going to put the piece of tape on the string so that I can draw on the tape, because if I was going back and forth and I kept drawing on the string, I may lose track of kind of where I am with my points, and I can always take the tape off and put it back on. So it's just kind of a little helpful to do it that way. Instead of having a bunch of marks on the string, it may get a little confusing. All right, well, hopefully you can see this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it tight, and my tape's going to be right about there. I'll just kind of drape it over almost like a little flag, and I will mark the tip of the wing. Okay, so one thing I wanted to say before I get going here is that I know that this wing is not perfectly built. I know that the fuselage is not perfectly built. I know that, you know, the string has a little bit of, you know, flexibility in it and those type of things. So, you know, it's not going to be, I want to get as close as possible, but, you know, my mind is that as long as it's not, you know, you have it pretty close, and I don't know what kind of number to give, like 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch, even probably on a wing this big, you know, 1/4 inch maybe, that may be a little too much. But anyhow, if it's off a little bit, it's not going to be a big problem, and that's why you have your trim settings on your transmitter, because, you know, the airframe this is a wooden airplane, and it's built by, you know, out of a kit, and it's just not going to be perfect, so you need to trim it anyhow. So anyhow, I just get it as close as I can, but I'm not going to, you know, freak out to try to get it down to, like, you know, a hair. So let me go ahead and mark it on this tip right here. Okay, so I got my little mark there, and now we'll go to the other side and I'll mark it over there, or at least I'll check it. And then I also, to start with, I just put like a little L on there for the left wingtip. I actually messed up. I thought I was on the right, but it's my left. So I got my left wingtip marked, and I'll go compare it with the right now. All right, so let me go ahead. There's my mark there, and I'll pull it over here, and it looks like it's really, wow, okay, pretty good. All right, so let me go ahead, and I just thought I would show you again one more time real quick. I put an R on this one right here, as you can see there. It's in the focus, and it's the same location as the left wing, so they're both the same, see? And if I come over here now and I put my tape on here, I'm right about there. And then I'm going to try to walk on this other side without getting tangled up. Got the string and I got the other stuff here. Just make sure this guy doesn't get tangled. There it goes. And then we'll come over here and we'll go to our left side, which is this guy right there. And there it is. And there you can see it's really darn close. All right, so that worked out pretty good. I'm really happy about that. So now what I'll do is I'll check it, and then I'll attach it with some clamping and some tape to get the wing to sit down really strong on the fuselage, and we'll come back and we'll drill out these holes for the dowels. So I checked it, I double checked it, I triple checked it, and once I was happy with it, as you can see here, I taped it, I clamped it, I put a couple pins in it, and this is now nice and snug on here. So now we can go ahead and drill those dowels through. All right, so now I carefully have to drill through these holes and poke through this former up here. And I have my smaller, you know, electric drill. Now the thing I need to be careful about is there's not a lot of room in here to work, and this needs to be, obviously I need to drill level and horizontal, and this is sort of big, and I think it would be okay, but it just barely goes in there, and I'm not even sure it would totally work. So this is a little part, this step is a little interesting to me of how they have you do this. So what I did is I kind of thought about it a little bit, and I went to my local hardware store, which is a Harbor Freight, and I got one of these. So this right here obviously is a little angle tool for drilling. And it has a little hex connection up here. It's not like a full-on chuck. And this was relatively cheap. And I can go ahead and put this in like this, hopefully put my drill on it and go ahead and drill this out. And if you're interested, this is a Warrior brand, and I got this at Harbor Freight, and I'm sure you can probably have a whole bunch of different options to buy it online from different places and different manufacturers and so on and so forth, but that's the one I got. All right, so this goes in here like this, simple enough. Gets tightened down on the chuck, and then you hold it. So I'm going to put my, this is a 5/16 drill bit. Oh. And hopefully I can get that in here and go straight through and pop out through the front here. And what's nice about this, because it's this hex connection, I can just put the drill bit in. I can kind of fish it through where it needs to go. I can kind of just feel it right about there. And then I can just connect this on here like this and start drilling. All right, now I'm going to do the other side. All right, so there they are. They came out okay. All right, so I had to do some sanding and kind of clean out some of the cuttings and things that were in the hole. So let me go ahead and see if I can get these dowels to kind of pop through so you can kind of see that. There's one there. And then this guy back here, a little tougher. It's going through a lot of little spots in there. There it goes. Like that. Okay. Next step is to remove the wing, and we'll glue the dowels in, and then we'll come back, set it back up again, and then we'll drill the wing mounting bolts. Okay, well for this I'm just going to go ahead and use my 5-minute epoxy, and then I have my little stick here, and I'm going to just sort of paint it on the inside of the holes, and then we'll push the dowels through and then clean them up on the end. And then I'll probably put some, well I will put some on the sort of on the outside here to kind of fill in a little bit, because you notice that when the drill bit came through, it kind of just broke on through, and you know, it was a pretty big diameter drill bit going through some soft balsa, so that was pretty much expected. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll probably come back and just patch around it with a little bit of putty or something. Okay, so the dowels are now installed, and I went back and put the wing on the fuselage again and got it lined up like I did last time. And this time it was a little bit easier because I already have the dowels, obviously. So I just lined up kind of tweaked it a little bit and made sure it was good from tip to tip like before. And I put in these sort of bigger T-pins and this clamp to hold it straight. So now the next step is to go ahead and drill out the holes for the wing bolts. And I had, like I mentioned, I took 2 pieces of thin plywood here, and these are about 1 inch square. And these are going to go about something like right about here. And then I'm going to drill through that, and then we'll tap out the mounting block below here. All right, well, back to the plan. So I need to transfer the location of the wing bolts to the actual wing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go ahead and make some measurements on the plan here. So I've already measured, and I'll write these down. This is the edge of the wing right here, and that is 3/4 of an inch in. Okay, I'll just put it right here, 3/4 of an inch in. And then from the edge, or the edge of the fuselage, it's a 1/2 inch in from there. So that's only a 1/2 inch right there. So from here to there. And then as for my little plates I have here, these are about 1 inch square. And so I'm going to go ahead and line it, like right here would be the middle. And since it's 1 inch square, I'm just going to measure a 1/2 inch from the center of the bolt, like that. And so this edge will be right there, and I'm just going to push it all the way out like that. And that should center that right over the wing bolt location. So what I'll do is I'm going to put this on first, and then I'll come back and I'll measure this on the wing, and then we'll drill the holes out. Okay, so one thing I need to point out real quick is, yeah, I measured from a 1/2 inch out to the edge of this plate, but I won't know where that is when I get to my wing over there. But I will know that this location here, because this is 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the wing, I'll know that I just have to go a 1/4 of an inch in to place this little plate like that. And once I get these on here measured correctly, I'm just going to go ahead and CA them on there with a thick CA, just like that. All right, so real quick, what I did is I just used a pilot hole using a 1/8 inch drill bit, and then I drilled it out with a 3/16 inch drill bit, and that went into the blocks, and that's the size we need when we tap it out with the tap that I do for the threads. Now the holes on the wing have to be drilled out further because the bolt, which I have right here, is actually a 1/4 inch bolt. Now the instructions say to drill it out with a 932, which is a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. But I'm going to go ahead and probably just so it gives you some room to kind of get it in there. But since this is wood, I'm going to go ahead and try the 1/4 inch first and see how that works. And if it fits nice, I'll leave it. If not, I'll go ahead and I'll ream it out with the 932. All right, well that worked out pretty nice. It's nice and snug. It's not too tight. They go in nicely. So I'm just going to leave it like that. If I have to later ream them out a little bit, I can, but I'm going to leave it like that for now. Let's take a look at the bottom real quick. Okay, and of course here's the bottom, and they're on this angle here because obviously the wing is got the taper in it. So they're going to come in sort of like this. Okay, well now it's time to tap out the threads in these mounting blocks. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of putting threads or tapping threads into wood, even though this is a hardwood. But, and, you know, typically I would like to use a blind nut on the other side and set a blind nut. But because these blocks are on an angle relative to the direction of the bolt itself, they're coming in like this, it's pretty difficult to put a blind nut unless you go ahead and put that angle in the block itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and thread it. So this is a 1/4x20 tap, which means it's a 1/4 inch diameter, and there's 20 threads per inch, which is the same as our nylon bolt here. And then I have this tap wrench. It just screws it in like the chuck right here. Now, these, you can go purchase these at your, at a hardware store. You can get them individually or you can get them in a set if you're not familiar with using a tap. And really it's actually a pretty simple process. So what we're going to do is, it's a little bit, if you're not familiar with the tap, the way this works is that it actually cuts the threads. Now typically if you have like a wood screw or something and you're screwing into wood, the threads are kind of augering into the wood and displacing the wood. In this case, we're actually cutting the wood, and this works the same for metal. So if you look at it closely, there's some teeth on there, but they're the same diameter. And then it's also tapered. So the tapering helps sort of it get lined up. So you're going to seat it in here and start screwing it in basically, and hopefully it should line up nicely with the direction of the hole that we drilled, and I'll be able to kind of put the threads in. Now the thing about it is, what you want to do is you turn it a few times, then you back it out. You turn it a few times, back it out, and you kind of work your way down. And as you back it out, what you're doing is you're basically trying to clear the teeth out from the cuttings. And then sometimes I'll take it completely out and then do it again. And then once we get it all finished and it's working nicely, we'll put some thin CA in there, and that's going to strengthen the wood threads, and then we'll tap it out again. And I may do that maybe 2 times or something like that, but in any case, that's the process. All right, so as you saw, it was a little bit difficult getting it started because, you know, this is wood. It's relatively soft compared to the cutting tool, or the tap, I should say. But now it's sort of, I got past that tapered section and it's nicely lined up, it looks like. And I can just go ahead and push it in now, or screw it in now. And then I can loosen it up as I go, pull it out, kind of free up some of those little shavings, and then go back in. And go back out a little bit. I wish these blocks were actually a little bit harder. This isn't really it's a harder wood, but it's not like a real hard wood. Okay. Now we'll just dribble some thin CA down there to strengthen up those threads. We'll let that set, and then we'll come back and redo it. Okay, we'll let this cure for a while and then come back and retap it. All right, well, I found my tap wrench to be a little on the heavy side, so I tried to do it, as you saw, with my just finger pressure. I was able to get it in and pull it out, so I just kind of worked with it. I did use the wrench at some point, but you know, again, I kind of feel like the wood threads are a little delicate, so I try to kind of do this sort of like with a light touch. All right, well there it is. The wing is now attached to the fuselage. That was quite an involved step. It took some time, so this video got pretty long. So I think I'm going to call it good for now. So in my next video, the next step of this build, we're going to continue with the fuselage. We're going to construct this upper part of the fuselage, and then, as I mentioned before, it extends over the wing. So there's going to be two parts to it. So it'll go right across the top here till somewhere like right about here. So that'll be the next step. Okay, well thanks for watching my channel. I always appreciate it, and we will see you next time.